about to say that devil was a liar. I went to hit the button and it tried to stop it. Thank you, Lord, for allowing it to go through. Well, once again, welcome you guys to Koinonia Shalom Midweek Bible Study. Um, I love seeing you guys. So thankful that you guys are here. Um, we are on Genesis chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22. We went over chapter 21 last week. Chapter 21 was about Abimelech. It was about it was about no, actually it wasn't about Abimelech. It was actually about Sarah and Abraham and Sarah having Isaac. Isaac finally being born. And the title for last week's study was Barashiyth, the fulfillment of the promise. We talked about that promise. We talked about how long it took for them to see that promise. That the promise was given when Abram was 75 years old, and he didn't see the fulfillment of it until he was 100. So it took 25 years for him to see this promise. And I challenged you guys to wait on God when it comes to the things that you have heard, when it comes to the things that He have showed you in dreams and visions, prophetic words, prophetic utterance, things of that nature, right? Things that He has placed on your heart. I challenge you guys to wait on the Lord concerning those things, because if it took Abram, who is the father of faith, and who is known to be, the friend of God, it took him and Sarah 25 years to see such a promise, and here we are. We get upset and we get bent out of shape if we didn't see something happen within 2 weeks. But here is Abram, who believed God to move, and believe God on different things, to pick up, leave his family, start in a whole new place that he had never seen, go off a word that God had gave him in a land that he had never been to, and he did it. And it took 25 years for him to see the fulfillment of the portion that was supposed to take place in him. And we went over some of those things last week, but this week we're getting into uh chapter 22. And chapter 22, the study, the theme, the title for today's Bible study is Barashiyth, Isaac, Abraham's Yachiyd. I'm going to explain what Yachiyd mean in the Bible study. Isaac, Abraham's Yachiyd. And I'm going to begin just from reading. We're starting at Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 24. And this is what it says. After these things, God tested Abram. I read from the ESV, as you guys know. You can follow along from the ESV or the KJV. It doesn't matter. After these things, God tested Abraham, and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. He said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide. As it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now, after these things, it was told Abraham, behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethulah. Bethulah fathered Rebekah. These eight Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Teba, Geham, Tahash, and Makkah, or Massa. This is Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 24. I want to get into that first verse. Now, y'all know I always read the chapter first, and then we get into the breakdown of the verses. Getting into this first verse, we read 24 verses, but this first verse is so important. It says, and it came to pass after these things that God tempted Abraham. This is, matter of fact, and the King James version says tempt. The ESV says that God tested, right? Now the Britain Septuagint uh says, and it came to pass after these things that God tempted Abraham and said to Abraham, Abraham, and he said, lo, I am here. From the first verse, whether you look at it as tested or tempted, tested and tempted are the words used in this verse to explain the theme of this chapter. After the events of chapter 21, Abba decides to test or tempt Abraham. Now, I want to get into what it means to test and what it means to tempt. To test in 1748, to examine the correctness of, from test, which is a noun, on the notion of put to the proof. Earlier, meaning to assay gold or silver. So to test gold or silver, meaning to administer a test. Okay. Late 14th century, small vessel used in assaying precious metals. So gold or silver being those precious metals, right? Tempt. In the 12th century, tempt was of the understood as being of the devil, flesh, etc., draw or entice to evil or sin, to lure someone from God's law, be alluring or seductive, from Old French tempter, which is in the 12th century, from Latin temptere, to feel, try out, attempt to influence, test, a variant of tenter, handle, touch, or try, right? Now, the word for this tempt or test is the Hebrew word nasah. Nasah. It is H5254. If you want to look it up, if you have a Strong's Concordance, it is H5254 in the Brown Drivers Briggs or the Strong's Concordance. Okay, if you want to look it up yourself, it is Nasah. It is spelled Nasah. The Hebrew spelling is Nun Samik Hey. Nun Samik Hey. The English spelling is Nasah. Okay. In the Brown Drivers Briggs definition, it means to try, test, prove, tempt, assay, put to the proof, or test, right? Um, it's a primitive root. But in the ancient Hebrew understanding of it, dealing with the letters, nasay means a test to prove one is deserved of being lifted up, because it comes from a root word which means to lift. Okay. It's believed that it comes from this root word, parent root in Hebrew, which means to lift. So nasay is the quality of, or the understanding of, a test to prove one is deserved of being lifted up. The Greek word used in the Septuagint for test is parazo. Parazo. Parazo, you can look it up in the Dyer's Greek lexicon or the Strong's Concordance. Again, it is G3985. This is the word that they used in the Septuagint. Now, to those who understand what the Septuagint is, the Septuagint was the bringing together of the Hebrew text for the purpose of translating the Hebrew text to those Greek Yahudim or Greek Jews who understood only the Greek language. So what they did was they 70 elders from the from different walks, 70 elders, religious leaders, decided to translate the Hebrew text into the Greek so that way the Hellenized Yahudim, the Hellenized Jews, can be able to translate and read the word of God in I'm about to say English and Greek, okay, in their tongue, which was their native tongue, because some of them was scattered and some of them spent time in Greece and different territories that was owned by Greece, and Greek was the main language at the time. Much like we speak English, and there's some places that was colonized by different places were colonized in this way, so we speak that language. Okay, so they made a translation called the Septuagint, which means 70 because it was 70 of them that did it. To convey the understanding of what Torah and the writings were speaking, right? So they use the word perazo. Perazo means to try whether a thing can be done. So along the same lines as Nassau. To attempt, endeavor. Second meaning to try, make trial of test for the purpose of ascertaining his quantity or what he thinks or how he will behave. In a good sense, in a bad sense, to test one maliciously, craftily, to put to the proof his feelings or judgments. To try or test one's faith, virtue, character by enticement to sin. This is something that the enemy does. To solicit to sin, to tempt, of the temptations of the devil after the Old Testament usage of God to inflict evils upon one in order to prove his character and the steadfastness of his faith. Men are said to tempt God by exhibitions of distrust as though they wish to try whether he is not justly distrusted. By impious or wicked conduct to test God's justice and patience and to challenge him. Okay, this is some of the ways that this word is used in the Greek manuscripts. Okay, what I just read. The philosophers teach that there are two kinds of knowledge. Two kinds of knowledge, because he says here to test two kinds of knowledge. God, from the beginning, this author here, and it's believed to be Moses by scholars. Moses is making the point before we even get into the text that Abba is testing Abraham. In the first verse, he makes a point of mentioning that this was a test. Okay, so in testing him, he's not testing him as in I don't know this quality about him. I'm testing him to prove what I already know about him. Okay, so going back to what I was just reading, the philosophers teach that there are two kinds of knowledge of events prior to their occurrence and knowledge of what is presently in existence, which is the latter, is the meaning of God did prove or now I know, which we will see in verse 12. Now, this is something that Ibn Ezra has shared when he looked over the text. You guys know about Ibn Ezra. I have used some of his works in the past with some of dealing with Genesis. Ibn Ezra, for those who don't know, was a scholar from, I want to say, the 12th century, probably after that, a little after that. Widely known for his works on the Torah and the Hebrew language. He's very practical, very literal when he translates the Hebrew language, and how he deals with the scripture. He's a widely accepted scholar from the old world, right? Um, this is what he says. He said, God knew, where he says, now I know, which is in the later verse we will see, what Abraham would do if tested. However, until Abraham offered Isaac, God's knowledge was knowledge of the potential or possible. He tested Abraham, did prove to actualize his knowledge, according to Krinsky. He now knew what Abraham did, not only what Abraham would do. So so what they're trying to, what they believe, what scholars believe, Ibn Ezra, and from what I was reading, a lot of them afterwards, they believe that God already knew what Abraham was going to do. And this is one of the reasons why Moses wrote at the beginning of the text of the chapter that God tested him. Because God already knew what he was going to do, but God tested him. And we're going to see later that there was a reason why God tested him. Okay. From the beginning, this tells us that Abba desired to actualize what he already knew about Abraham. He wanted to actualize it. He knew it by foreknowledge. He knew it by his all-knowing knowledge, right? By being able to see it already, because he declares the end of a thing at its beginning. He already knew, but he wanted to actualize it. He wanted to make it tangible. He wanted to put it into the world. So here is this test. This trial was to push Abraham into what Abba ordered his steps to be. This was not a test to cause him to fall. This was a test to cause him to arise to purpose. Okay. The first point we need to know at with understanding of the text is we have to understand that God was testing Abraham, and it was not part of God's plan to allow Isaac to be sacrificed. A lot of people, and in the past, when I used to deal with people that's how can I say, Old Testament only, right? A lot of them used to try to use certain scriptures to try to say the sacrifice that was done with Jesus is outside of Torah, or outside of different things, because of the fact is God does not do human sacrifice. We understand that. The thing about this, God never intended for Isaac to die, and requesting that Abraham go and sacrifice his son. It was not a part of God's plan to allow Isaac to be sacrificed. In fact, scripture clearly records that the human sacrifices are an abomination to the Lord in Leviticus chapter 20. Now, verse 2 says, he said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall tell you. So he told him to take his son, your only son, according to the ESV, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall show you. Now, was Isaac Abraham's only son? Let me ask y'all that, because we got to get this established first. Was he, and anybody can answer, but just unmute your mic, be like no, or you could write in the chat and be like no. Was Isaac
No,
Abraham's
no, he
only son?
wasn't.
No, he wasn't. And yet, over and over again, we have the text translating this Hebrew word as only son. Okay. And we know he had Ishmael. We know, and Ishmael was his firstborn, right? We know this. So the answer is no. So what does this word mean in Hebrew that they keep translating? Because the King James says only son, ESV says only son. Um, a lot of the versions that I was looking at, all of them says only son with, and not saying that there's an exception of one, but I know one that does not, and that's the Britain Septuagint. But the Hebrew word that they keep translating and they keep rendering as only son is the Hebrew word Yachiyd. Yachiyd. If you want to look at it, it is H3173 and the Brown Drivers Briggs. H3173. And that's where you can find it in the Brown Drivers Briggs, or you can find it in not the Septuagint. You can find it in the Strong's Coordinates. And this is what it means. It can mean only one, solitary, solitary, or one, only, or it can mean unique, only begotten son. This is what the Brown Drivers Briggs goes into. Now, there's more of an extensive definition when you have the actual book, but I'm using the software, so it's not as detailed. Strong's Concordance says this about Yachiyd. Yachiyd. This is what it says. Properly united. That is soul, by implication, beloved. Soul as in SOLE, not SOUL. Okay. By implication, beloved. Also lonely. Feminine usage, the life as not to be replaced. Darling, desolate, only child, son, or solitary. Now, when you look at the breakdown of the old Hebrew, um getting into the ancient Hebrew lexicon, right? This is what it says. Yachiyd represents unity. A child as the product of a union. The soul as a unity of body, soul, and breath. Okay. It can mean, in King James Version, it is translated as only, darling, desolate, solitary. Okay. Now, this is the breakdown of the letters. When you break down each letter of Yachiyd, Yachiyd is spelled, let me spell it for you. In the English, it would be spelled using English letters, Yachiyd. Yachiyd. That's Yachiyd if you're using English characters. In the Hebrew, it is Yod, Ket, Yod, Dalet. Yod, Ket, Yod, Dalet. Yod, Ket, Yod, Dalet. And matter of fact, I can share my screen and show it to you because I like showing you guys stuff. Let me know when you guys can see it, like I always do with you guys. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see it.
Okay. Okay. Done. On there. Okay. So this is Yachiyd. Yod, Ket, Yod, Dalet. Okay. That's what it's made of. Yod, Ket, Yod, Dalet. Okay. And again, as you're seeing the definition here in the Brown Jarvis Briggs, only one, solitary one, being an adjective, da da da, right? And then here we go. This is the usage in the King James version. Okay. Only 7 times, darling twice, child once, desolate once, solitary once, son once. Okay. And even if we look at darling in Psalms 22, verse 20, let's look at it. Deliver my soul from the sword, my only begotten one, from the power of the dog. Or my darling. The Britain Septuagint would say, my only begotten one. And let me change this over to the ESV real quick. Hold on, guys. Well, no, actually, I will keep it there. Um, when you break down the letters of Yachiyd, like I told you, it is Yod, Het, Yod, Dalet. This is the breakdown of it, using the understanding of each Hebrew letter, because each Hebrew letter, like I've explained to you guys in the past, has a meaning. Yod being hand, it also means work and things of that nature. Ket meaning separate or war. It can also mean to divide. Dalet meaning door. It can also mean path. It can also mean entrance. Okay. The hand that separates or divides the works or deeds at the door or path. I'm going to read it again. The hand that separates or divides the works or deeds at the door or path. So a Yachiyd acts on behalf of the father and the father's interest to preserve the father's will and make sure it is continued and established by doing what? He separates and divides anything that will come against the house, anything that will try to withstand the house. He separates and divides those things that are at their door, that are against them. That's what the Yachiyd does. The Yachiyd is about preserving legacy, and this is why the Yachiyd, in context, is a beloved child. Okay, a beloved child. So a Yachiyd is the child of a specific union that we was reading before, a specific union. This is why the King James Version keeps saying only, because it's speaking of this child, or other texts are speaking of this child from this specific union. Okay. So that union being the one that continues the father's legacy. This Yachiyd is the extended hand of the father's beloved or prized son. Why extended hand? Because Yod is a picture of an outstretched arm. If you look at the Hebrew letters, it is an outstretched arm. That's how it looks. Okay, it really looks like a stick figure arm. Okay, um, So with that understanding, the father, the Yod is I mean the Yod, the Yachiyd is the one who the father sends out on his behalf to do the bidding of his domain, his kingdom, his territory, his will, and to establish it. That is the Yachiyd, and this is why the Yachiyd is considered an only begotten or a beloved son. Now the Septuagint reads, and he said, take thy son, the beloved one whom thou hast loved, Isaac, and go into the highland and offer him there for a whole burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. I love the way the Britain Septuagint writes it. In my opinion, the Britain Septuagint is the only one that does the word Yachiyd any justice, because it does not mean only in a way of there being no others, but it means beloved, as in prized, as in you are the one that carries this legacy. You are, just for the sake of saying it, you my favorite. Okay. This is what Yachiyd speaks to. This is a beloved son, a darling son. This is the son that gets all the blessings, the son that gets the legacy. This is the son that receives the promise. This is that son. So Yachiyd would not be said of Ishmael. Yachiyd would not be said of the sons of Keturah, which we will see later. Yachiyd would not be said of them. Yachiyd is said of Isaac because he is the child of promise. He is the child of this certain union. The union that has been stamped by the seal of Abba, okay? Because what God puts together, let no man put asunder, and whatever comes from that union is sealed in a promise, okay? Um, Anybody need any further explanation of that? Anybody need me to dive into that further, or I'm good to move forward? I just want to make sure I don't want to leave nobody behind. I do talk fast from time to time.
You good?
All right. Okay, just want to make sure y'all was keeping up. Also, what is not understood is that connected to both the word for son and Yachiyd is my favorite one, the seal of Mashiach. Anybody know what the seal of Mashiach is? I bring this up every time. The seal of Mashiach. What is the seal? What is Mashiach's sign in the Hebrew text? Anybody know? What is his sign?
Uh, isn't that you said a sign?
Yeah, his sign in the Hebrew writings. What is his sign?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Would that be pertaining to like the Hebrew letters?
Yes, the Hebrew letters. What is his
Wouldn't
sign?
it be?
What is his specific
Wouldn't it be?
sign?
Yo, hey, uh,
You thinking about the name of Abba. You thinking about Yahuwah. You
right?
thinking about
Yeah,
Yod He
yeah.
Vav He. Mm-mm, mm-mm. And the Hebrew letters, the sign of Mashiach is the Aleph Tav. Remember what he said in the book of Revelation? He said, I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Alpha and Omega in Hebrew would be Aleph Tav. It is the sign of Mashiach. So when he said that to John, he was letting John know who he was, that I am the one who existed from the beginning, before there was a beginning, and I am the one who will be here at the end. This is his seal. This is his sign in the text, and how to recognize him throughout the entirety of the text. And we're going to see that here. As a matter of fact, let me do. I do parallel. Okay. Okay. So here I have a parallel. I have the ESV. I have the Hebrew Old Testament with the Strong's numbers, and I have the Britain Septuagint. Verse 2, right? Verse 2 in the ESV says, and he said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering, one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Brent Septuagint says, and he said, take thy son, the beloved one, whom thou hast loved, Isaac, and go into the highland and offer him there for a whole burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. In the Hebrew, we don't even see what has been fully stated here, because some of it goes untranslated. And I talked about this a lot when I be talking about the Hebrew language. One of the things that goes untranslated is the sign of Mashiach. They call it a definite article. So they really don't translate it. They what they say is that the Aleph Tav points to the subject of the verse. That's what they when you go to do any type of Hebrew learning, they will tell you that Aleph Tav in a text is pointing to the subject of the verse. It's more than that. The thing is, either they can't see it or understand it, or they're choosing not to say it because of what it points to. And I'm telling you that it points to Mashiach. It points to the Alpha and the Omega, the Aleph and the Tav, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, the author and the finisher of our faith. Okay. The seal of Mashiach being there to me, that all along, this is what it tells us. It paints a picture that all along, that Abba planned to sacrifice his Yachiyd, which is Mashiach, this whole time. And I'm gonna show you where's that. The writer being used of the Ruach, which is Moshe, or whoever he had to scribe it, to place that seal in both those spots is nothing short of divine and prophetic intervention. Abba was asking of Abraham what he intended to do this whole time. Give his son to produce his will. Was Abba gauging through Abraham the faith and strength it would take to commit? Was Isaac's response to a foreshadow of Mashiach? Let's get into it. First off, I want to show you where the Aleph Tav is in the text. Okay. Matter of fact, come out of that. Give me 1 second. Let me change this over. I want to go to the Hebrew. Okay. Verse 2. Va'amar chatnai et banak. Okay. So right here is Aleph Tav. Well, actually, right here is the Aleph Tav. Alpha, Aleph Tav, Aleph and Tav, Aleph and Tav. Okay. It's the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the sign of Mashiach in the text. And right here, it is connected to this word here. Okay. Then it is here again, and it is connected to this word here. Now, this word here is actually Yachiyd. Yachiyd. But this suffix at the end, so this is son, ban, so this is bet and noon, and then this is a suffix. That suffix is a I want to say that is a kaf, and then this is Yachiyd, and then it has a suffix with a kaf as well. That suffix actually means your. Okay, your. So or dine, your or dine. So that's why King James versions would say your own, I mean dine only or thy son, right? So when you look at the King James version here at the bottom, it says, and he said, take now thy son. So son right here is ban. We have that suffix at the end, which is that your. So that's where you get thy son. If we click it here, we're gonna get to build. Okay. Right? That's the understanding of it, because a son builds, right? But the whole word together means ben, son, grandson, child, member of the group, right? So he said, and he said, take now thy son. Now, right here, I want you to, do you guys see my cursor? Right here is H1121. That is the Hebrew coordinates number for when you want to access the word son, okay? Which is Ben in Hebrew. Right here, H853 is Aleph Tav. It is not translated. It is actually put in parentheses. It is not translated. Do you guys see that? There is no translation for this word here. There's no translation for this sign here. It is just in the text, and it is in the text in the Old Testament a lot, especially in the first 4 books of the Old Testament, which is the Torah. It is seen so many times throughout the text. In the book of Genesis, it is in the very first verse, and it's seen all over. And you guys, I went through this with you multiple times, right? But to those who are new, I just want to express it. Now, if I click that, you're going to get Aleph Tav. Okay, I'm gonna do just a brief breakdown of it. Aleph Tav means to plow, right? That's the actual understanding. The concrete understanding is Mark. The pictograph Aleph is a picture of an ox. The Tav is a picture of 2 cross sticks used to make a sign or a mark. Combined, these pictures represent an ox moving toward a mark. When plowing a field with oxen, the plowman drives the oxen toward a distance mark in order to keep the furrow straight. A traveler arrives at his destination by following a mark. The traveling toward a mark, destination, or person. The arrival of one to the mark, a you as an individual who has arrived to a me, the coming toward a mark, a standard, a flag with the family mark hangs as a sign, an agreement or covenant by two where a sign or mark of the agreement is made as a reminder to both parties. So this can be understood as to a plow point, a mark, the traveling toward a mark, destination of a person, the arrival of one, right? Okay. All these things that is understood for you, things of that nature. Okay. Here, Brown Drivers Briggs would tell you that it means sign of the definite direct object, not translated in English, but generally preceding and indicating the accusative. Okay. So it's not translated. They use it to point to it is a definite direct object. It points to a thing. It brings emphasis on it, right? That's what it does. But it's more than that. This is the sign of Mashiach, the olive tav throughout the text. This is why when you get to John, John says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. He understands that because you can track the olive tav from Genesis chapter 1 all the way to the end of the Torah. The olive tav is always there. And the olive tav is inserted in special areas to denote that this is a foreshadow of Mashiach. So let me get back to the lesson. You guys understand that, or do I need to go into that further? I don't want to lose anyone. Let me know. Y'all keeping up? Just want to make sure. If y'all need me to repeat it, please ask me to. I don't mind. Okay, so connected to Yachiyd and connected to son, where it says, and he said, take now thy son, Aleph Tav, and thine only son, Aleph Tav, which is, and it says thy only son is Isaac, but there's a, where it says thine only son is connected to Aleph Tav. It's pointing to Mashiach. So what is he saying? And he said, take now thy son. It's just telling you that the son, thine only son, is a foreshadow of Mashiach. Isaac is a foreshadow of what Mashiach is going to come do. That's what's being expressed here. Whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you. Now, Moriah, I don't know if anybody know about Mount Moriah, meaning chosen by Yahuwah, the place where Abraham took Isaac for sacrifice, but it's also the mount on the eastern edge of Jerusalem on which Solomon built the temple. This is also the place on the eastern edge of Jerusalem where Solomon built the temple. Okay, let's get back into that ESV. Okay, so Abraham rose early. Matter of fact, I'll come out of this. The text says, so Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. That's Genesis 22, verses 3 through 5. They traveled for 2 full days. And on the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance that God told him to go to. They went 3 days journey from where he told him that he was going to sacrifice. You walking 3 days knowing that you gotta offer up your son. But Abraham has the type of faith, and he says, me and the boy will return. He knew that if he took his servants up that mountain with him, that they would be an obstruction to him doing God's will. So he told them to stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over. Sometimes y'all got, let me just stop right here just to make a point. Sometimes you got to tell people they got to stay still. Sometimes you got to tell people they can't go with you. Why? Because they're a distraction. They're an obstruction to the things of Abba. Sometimes you got to separate yourself from people so that way you can do what God is calling you to do. And at that moment, those servants would have been an obstruction. So he told them to stay there because what he had to do only he needed to do, and it consisted of him and his son, not anybody else. You can walk me there, but you can't go. And you have to have that mindset in some instances. Some people can go with you a certain mile, but once it's time up and God tells you they have to stay there, you can't take them. You have to continue this journey because this is a test for you and for your son. That's the thing we have to understand in our lives today. That these things, we can't expect people to be with us on every level and every circumstance in our lives. Sometimes we got to do this thing and carry this load by ourselves with God as our support. And if we're afraid to do that, we need to have more faith in God. Okay, continue. Doing the will of God may at times require extending the meaning of throwing off everything that hinders us from running the race, according to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, to include people whom we think may stand between us and the will of God. Abraham assured the servants, we will worship and then we will come back to you. It caused you to wonder what Abraham was thinking when he said we will come back. Was he anticipating a miracle that would take place? Did he just know within his thoughts that God ain't gonna really have me sacrifice my son? He gonna provide, right? Was he enacting his faith? Verses 6 through 12 says, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. Took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together, and Isaac said to his father Abraham, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. He said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told them, right? Abraham built the altar there, and he laid the wood in order and bound Isaac and his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife up to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, I'm here. He said, do not lay a hand on the boy. Don't do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son. So the now I know goes back to what I read before. When God knew what Abraham would do, but it's a potential, right? He wanted to bring it into actuality. So he put him to the test to bring it forth. Okay. Take the wood. This is what he says. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. This is what it says. I want y'all to follow me. Taking the wood and laying it on his son. Again, remember that Isaac is the Yachiyd. What does Yachiyd mean again? Beloved son. What does the Yachiyd represent? The one who does the bidding of the Father, right? He's the one that causes, he's sent to divide on behalf of the Father. That's what he is. He's a beloved son. He carries the legacy. He continues the legacy. He does the will of his Father. That is a Yachiyd. So Isaac being a Yachiyd and a type of Christ, the wood was laid on him. This is what it says. This is the text. Taking the wood and laying it on his son is speaking prophetically, and it represents Mashiach. It is a foreshadow of Mashiach. The wood being laid on him being the cross. I want y'all to look at the text because it says, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. That's what it says in verse 6. Y'all see that? If you're following along with the scriptures. Isaac is a type of Mashiach. He is the Yachiyd here, and the Aleph Tav was attached to the Yachiyd. The word Yachiyd. It was attached to the word son as well. This is a foreshadow of our Lord and Savior. This is a foreshadow of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. The word here for wood also represents tree. So the word for wood here is saying that he laid the tree on his son, meaning Isaac had to carry the tree. Isaac had to bear the tree while walking to the place where he would be sacrificed. Who did that? Mashiach. Mashiach bore the tree. He carried the tree. Okay? There's no coincidence that this is happening. Okay, there's no coincidence that the olive tav is, because look, the word here for wood also represents tree. Attached to the word wood is again aleph and tav. There is no coincidence that this keeps occurring. So the olive tav keeps being connected to words that are foreshadow for Mashiach. You have son and you have Yachiyd. They both had olive tav. And you have tree. I'm going to show you because I don't want y'all to think, I'm just making it up. Let me show you. Verse 6. Can you guys see? Just let me know. And Abram took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. You see that, right? Okay, let's go. And excuse me. Do I want to compare? Yeah, I can compare. Okay. Okay. So this is, and he took Abram the wood. This is wood. He took wood. Utz. Okay. The wood. Now, you see again, olive tav, and then it's connected to wood. Now let's click this. I'm going to show you. This is the word for wood. Etz, tree, wood, timber, stock, plank, stalk, stick, gallows, trees, wood, pieces of wood, gallows, firewood, cedar wood, woodly flax. Okay, so this word covers all of that. Okay, and in this fullest understanding, it means tree. Curse is the one who hangs on the tree, right? Okay, we understand that. And we see the olive tav right here is connected to tree. So that means Mashiach is the one that's going to what? Bear the tree. Just as Abraham took the wood and laid it on his son, the wood is going to be laid on Mashiach. Why? Because a tree is high up. A tree is what shows fruit. Okay? It bears fruit. Mashiach was going to be hung on a tree. This is all a foreshadow. He was going to be the sacrifice. When Abraham keeps saying out of his mouth, God will provide a ram, or God will provide a sacrifice, God will provide a lamb. He don't even know that he's speaking from his mouth. He's already speaking prophetically what's going to take place. And it's seen in the Old Testament. And this is why over and over, like I showed you guys before, when in the time of Mashiach, when he's dealing with the Pharisees, and he says, before Abraham was, I am. Abraham, he said, Abraham and I'm delighted to see his day, right? And we went over when how Abraham had a occurrence with Mashiach when we went over the men that came to Abraham and Sarah and prophesied of Isaac before they destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and how one of them was Mashiach. We went over this. Right? So here we're having this thing where it's understood in the text, they want it to be understood that this is a prophetic understanding, foreshadow of the Messiah, of the Mashiach, of Christ. Okay? The Hebrew letters for tree or wood paints the picture of seeing or experiencing or observing righteousness or uprightness, a man on his side laid out vulnerable to see what is desired. Because Aleph, no, I'm sorry, Ayin and Sadi is the Hebrew word for tree. Ayin and Sadi is the Hebrew word for tree. And then you have this yod attached to it, meaning work or deed, right? Even if we want to deal with that being attached to it, it'd be the understanding would be experiencing or observing the man on his side outstretched. Experience or observing, right? Righteousness, outstretched. Desire, need, outstretched. This and that paints a picture of Christ. He was stretched out on wood, stretched out on the tree, you can say. Okay? Y'all following me? Um, God will provide. Abraham knew that Abba saw his circumstance, and his faith would eventually from sin act on his behalf to uphold the covenant. He just knew it, and that's why he kept speaking the way he spoke. And this is why in the text, let me go back. In the text here, we get him saying it. It says in verse 8, Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. Why is this important? Because right here where it says God will provide, Abraham said, already confessed out of his mouth, God will provide. So that's El Ra, right? El Ra will be God provides. The word for provide is here. Ra. Okay? Ra. And it means to see, literally or figuratively, transitively, intransitively, causatively. Advise, self, appear, approve, behold, certainly consider, discern, right? See. In seeing, he provides. So God will provide. When he said God will provide, he's saying that God will provide because he sees what we're going through. He sees the journey that we're taking. He sees that we're walking up this mountain. He sees that I have laid the wood on you. He sees our circumstance. He already knows that you're my only son, right? He already knows that you're the Yachiyd. You're the one that's basically my beloved. You're the one that's going to carry my legacy. So with seeing all of this, with knowing all of this, with experiencing all of this, God will provide. So he already declares the provision of God before actually seeing it. And that's something that we have to come into agreement with. We have to begin to what? Declare the provision of God before we actually see it. It just takes faith. It just takes us speaking a thing, though it may not be. Speaking a thing, and we call it, some people call it speaking into existence. No, speak what it is, even if you don't see it. According to
Amen.
your faith. According to your faith. That's what Abraham did.
Yes.
Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. And then later down the verse, he ends up using those same words, but now he attaches the name of God to the provide.
Uh-huh.
You won't be able to attach the name until you operate in faith and say that God will do it in the first place. Then once God heals, whatever you need him to be, God will heal. So God will be Rapha. If you need him to be Rapha, you got to confess God will heal. And then now you can attach to his name to it once he has done it.
Amen. That's the way to do it.
Hand, knife. This is what it says. It says, and Abram took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they both went up together. Hand and knife, and son all have Aleph and Tav in the 8th verse. I meant to say the 6th verse. All of it has Aleph and Tav. All of it. All of it. I'm gonna show you. Matter of fact. Not this one. 10th verse, sorry. Okay. In the 10th verse, this is what it says. It says, and he sent Abraham. This is the word. This is and he is shalak. That means sent, or he stretched forth. But it's sending. Okay, it means to send. I'm gonna show you. I don't want to just. Okay, the word shalak, send. Okay, shalak, to send, to stretch out. Okay, it means sending. So, and the same, this is where the Hebrew understanding of apostle comes from. Okay, one who was sent. Abraham is a type of apostle because he was sent to that land. Abraham is a type of apostle because he was sent to these places. Okay, um, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And Abraham stretched forth. Abraham, he was sent up there. He stretched forth. He sent. He stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. So, and he stretched forth Abraham his hand. This is Yod, but they put the U at the end, so his hand. Now the Aleph Tav connected here. And he took Aleph Tav, the knife. This is the word for knife. This word for knife comes from the root word which means to eat, or actually means all, whole, or to consume, right? A knife, you use a knife to consume your food, to basically cut it up into pieces so you can be able to consume it. So this is the understanding here. And then to slay, this is slay here. To slay, this is Banu, his son. That's his son. But it's connected again, Aleph Tav. So you have hand, knife, son. All of them have Aleph Tav. Abraham is the foreshadowing of Abba sending his son, his hand, to be slain to complete the atonement. Because it is Abraham's hand that is stretching out to slay his son. This is the hand stretching out to slay his son using what? The knife. Abraham here is playing a foreshadow of the father. The father sends his hand. Who is his hand? Mashiach. Mashiach is the father's right hand. He sends his hand out to do what? To be slayed. To complete the sacrifice. For what? The atonement. So this is why the Aleph Tav is on hand, it is on son, and it is on the knife. Because the knife is representing the completing or the whole work of the assignment, which is the sacrifice. The sacrifice. To be slayed. Now I know where it says, now I know, that's the next verse. Give me 1 second. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. Da, da, da. It says, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. So now I know. Now I know. The best of mankind was willing to offer his Yachiyd. So why shouldn't Abba? At the time, Abram is the best of mankind. Now he knew that mankind was worthy of his ultimate plan, which was tied to the covenant he made with Abraham in the beginning. I'm talking about from chapter 12. He knew this man is worthy of the entirety of everything. Now he knew. He knew this day would come. He just needed to prove it. He needed to actualize it. Prove as in actualize it. Bring it into fruition. In the same way that we see Abba, he sees us. He proves us and we must prove him. So how do we prove Abba? Not by putting him to the test as in trying to provoke him to jealousy. We prove Abba by reminding him of his promise and walking in his will. When we walk in his will, through trials and tribulation, we pass tests. We don't know we're being tested at times. We pass tests. We pass things. There's things that bring us to levels of anointing, and those levels of anointing unlock purpose. That purpose is actually Abba's plan. We are being proved. And from being proved, we are actually proving what he said about us in the beginning from his word. We are a word. Written epistles, written amongst men. It's on us. We are a spoken word from the mouth of Abba. And he proves that word by watching over that word and ordering our steps to align with the word that he has decreed from the beginning about who we are. And he did it with Abraham and Isaac. And they're a foreshadow of Mashiach and himself. I'm just listen. I hope you guys following along. I hope it's not too much. This is what we have to understand. This is what he did. He knew that this day would come. And what is the reason why he did it? To give them a reward. The end result is a reward. It's a reward. Verses 13 to 24, this is what it says. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide, which is Yahuwah Yireh, or Yahuwah Yireh. This is what he did. This is what he did. And see, he understands now. Yahuwah Yireh, Jehovah Jireh. This is what we know it as, right? Jehovah who sees. Yahuwah who sees or provides. By seeing, he provides. Okay? He see the circumstance. He see what you're going through. He was able to give utterance to the character of Abba because he continued full through with the task. He let Abba determine whether he was to stop or not. But he was committed to see it through. As it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time, listen to this, from heaven and said, by myself I sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand as in the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and they went together to Beersheba, and the rest of it is about other people that we don't care about. So Abraham looks up. He looks up. That's what it says. Because he was called. His name was called, and he looked up. After the whole God will provide, he continued to get ready to slaughter his son. It says, but the angel of the Lord called out to him. He said, here I am. He said, do not lay your hand on your son. What is this? And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked. Abraham looked up. Olive Tav is attached to that too. Matter of fact, right here, if you see the cursor, right here, you have the lifted up, which is funny that it uses the word lifted up, right? Because it's Nasar, and it used Nasar at the beginning, when tested. So it says Abraham was tested, but then you get down here to this verse where it's the completion of the whole matter, and it says that Abraham, he looked up. And it's the Olive Tav connected to him, looking up. Okay, so Olive Tav is right here again. Abraham looks up, Olive Tav, saw the ram and took the ram, Olive Tav, because Olive Tav is attached to ram as well. It's attached there too. Saw the ram, took the ram. Olive Tav is here. Okay. And in this place, the ram takes the place of his son, which is what Abba's son does instead of man. He becomes our ram so we can enjoy covenant. So whereas, do y'all remember when I talked about when Abba made that covenant with Abraham and he put him to sleep? Do y'all remember that? What happened when Abba put Abraham to sleep? Do anybody remember? Who walked between the pieces? Do anybody remember who walked between them pieces when Abba put Abraham to sleep? And he was in that dream. He was caught up in that dream. Who put him to sleep? Who walked between the pieces? If you remember, Abba walked between the pieces. Abraham never walked between the pieces. And had Abraham walked between the pieces, Abraham and his descendants would have been held to the penalty if it was ever transgressed. Because Abba walked between the pieces, it is now Abba's responsibility to uphold the covenant, not only uphold the covenant, to mitigate any threat or anything to the covenant, and to also take on the effect and the harm that comes from transgressing the covenant. So Abraham and his descendants are actually fully insured because of this covenant and the way that it was initiated. It was initiated with Abba walking between the pieces and not Abraham. This is why Abba had to send his son to die on behalf of his people to bring the people back into covenant. Had Had Abba not walked in between the pieces, and when I say Abba, I'm talking about Mashiach, because he's the one that is the delegated authority and acts on behalf of the heavens. He's the one that does everything on the earth on behalf of Abba. No man has seen Abba, but they've definitely seen Mashiach. So he's the one that walked between those pieces. And because he did that, he was the one that had to face, for the sake of the covenant, the tree, the cross. Okay? Yahuwah Jireh, Jehovah who sees. Same place where it was named Yahuwah Jireh is the same place where Solomon built the temple. In verse 16, we have Yahuwah swearing by himself because Abraham had done a thing. What thing did he do? He fulfilled what was quiet for him from the beginning, which was in the plan of Abba to bless him. He fulfilled it, and from fulfilling it, he was blessed. The Aleph and Tav is attached to this thing. This thing being word. Abraham fulfilled the word, which is the predestinated plan of Abba for his life. What is the benefit of fulfilling the thing or the word on your life? The benefit is salvation. The benefit is the blessing. What happens now? The benefit is in verse 17. Pay attention to the Aleph Tav connect to this is what it does. Verse 17. Let's look at it. Verse 17. I will surely bless you. I will surely bless you, and I will surely that in blessing I will bless thee, and multiplying I will multiply thee. Okay, so we have that in blessing I will bless thee, that in multiplying I will multiply thee. Thy seed. So we have Aleph Tav. Aleph Tav is right here. Aleph Tav is connected to thy seed as the stars of heaven and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. So thy seed has an Aleph Tav. Thy seed as the stars of the seashore. Now, when they speak of seed, this is not seeds as Paul mentions. This is seed. This seed as the stars of the sky. This seed will be exalted as he's going to multiply it. To multiply here. Now, we would say multiply as in to make abundant, right? To make abundant. It means more than that. It means to become great. So there's a twofold prophecy here. There's twofold prophecy here. When he says, I will multiply your seed, yes, he's talking about expansion and abundance. That's dealing with the physical seed. That's dealing with Isaac's children and those children and the 12 children of Israel, right? Dealing with that. That's the seed, right? But then the actuality of the true prophecy is the seed, that seed being Mashiach. He will make him great as the star. So meaning he will have his own star. He'll be so great, he'll have his own star. We know that happened when his star shone in the sky, and the pagan magi, when they saw it, they went to his star and saw the king in the manger, and they offered gifts because they recognized the star, which was his star. See, everything in Genesis is pointing to Mashiach. I'm just a messenger. It's all pointing to Mashiach. All of it. That's why the Aleph Tav is riddled throughout the text. Okay? Throughout the text. Your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your offspring shall possess the gate. What is the gate? Let's deal with the gate. The Hebrew word gate, sha'ar, because Aleph Tav is also attached to this word gate. Sha'ar. Sha'ar means gate of entrance, gate of space inside, gate, i.e. marketplace, public meeting place, city, town, gate of a palace, royal castle, temple, court, or tabernacle, of a court of a tabernacle, or also of heaven. If you want to look this up yourself, it is H8179. H8179. And this is the understanding behind it. Gate, which is the entrance into a city, as well as the activities carried out there, such as marketing and judging. Marketing and judging. If you break down each Hebrew letter, which is Shin, Ayin, Resh. Shin, Ayin, Resh. It means to consume or destroy and observe from the top or the highest point. To consume, destroy, and observe from the top or highest point. The one who possesses the gate sits as judge and ruler. This is talking about Mashiach. This is why the Aleph Tav is attached to the word gate. It's talking about Mashiach. It's talking about the Messiah. And see, there's so many people who just gloss over this. A lot of people that only followed after the Old Testament. I don't understand why they keep ignoring this, because it's right there. This is about Mashiach. Though under him, Israel will possess what? 12 gates. Y'all know that? Revelations chapter 21, verse 12 through 13 says it had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. There was 12 gates to symbolize the children of Israel, and inscribed on those gates is the names of the children of Israel. And there was 12 angels, angels meaning messengers. So we could say that was the 12 sons of the children of Israel. They sit at the top of the gates. And if they sit at the top of the gates, what does that mean? They are the judges of the entrances of New Jerusalem, because that's talking about New Jerusalem. Just as Mashiach is the one who sits at the top of the gate, and he is the judge and ruler, and he stands over business when it comes to entering the kingdom. See, we got to pay attention to what this Aleph Tav is so important, because it's speaking prophetically. So there's a twofold message here. It's about Isaac, but it's also about Mashiach at the same time. Now, Yasha gives an account regarding what just took place, and Jubilees gives an account. Now, the book of Jubilees, you guys want me to read it? Let me ask y'all that first. Do y'all want me to read it? Because I can stop here, or I can read Jubilees. Now, for those who know what Jubilees is, Jubilees was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was a book that was read by the apostles, the Essenes, all of them. They understood the book of Jubilees. Okay. Y'all want me to read it? What's the account here for Genesis 22? Or do you want me to stop right here? Y'all let me know. What say y'all? I know some of y'all like to stay all day, but I want to know, because I don't want to go too long. Read it. Who just said this?
Yeah.
Who voice is that?
Jessica.
Okay, that's good. Oh, hey, how you doing? Okay, so we're gonna start. This is Jubilees chapter 17. We're gonna start at verse 15. Jubilees chapter 17, verse 15. And he said, "But do I want to start there? Let me see. 17 verse 15, or do I want to do 18? Yeah, I'll go to 15. Okay. Jubilees chapter 17, verse 15. Let me start there. I'm actually start at 14. And it came to pass in the seventh week, and the first year thereof, in the first month, and this Jubilee on the 12th of this month, there were voices in heaven regarding Abraham, that he was faithful in all that he told him, and that he loved Yahuwah, and that every affliction, and that in every affliction he was faithful. And the prince Mestema came and said before Elohim, behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son, Mestema being another name for Hashatan, whatsoever. If you look it up, it'll tell you it's another name for Hashatan. I forgot the actual definition of the name. Sorry about that. But behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son, and he delights in him above all things else. Bid him to offer him as an ascending smoke offering on the altar, and you will see if he will do this command, and you will know if he is faithful in everything wherein you do try him. So here we have a motive. Here we have a motive for the testing. Here we have a motive for the trial. We have the Prince of Darkness, okay, trying to put Abba to the test, trying to basically test Abba by testing his children. Abba already knows the character of Abraham. It's like a Job situation here. Okay? This is what it says. And Yahuwah knew that Abraham was faithful in all his afflictions, for he had tried him through his country and with famine, and had tried him with the wealth of kings, and had tried him again through his woman, when she was torn from him, and with circumcision, and had tried him through Ishmael and Hagar, his maidservant, when he sent him away. This is everything God ever told Abraham to do. Every trial and tribulation, again, that's why I'm telling you, these trials and tribulation are according to God's plan for your life, and it's to elevate you. It's to bring you into purpose. It's to lift you up. Okay, that's what it's for. And in everything wherein he tried him, he was found faithful, and his soul was not impatient, and he was not slow to act, for he was faithful and a lover of Yahuwah. Chapter 18. Elohim said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Behold, I am here. And he said, Take your Yachiyd, whom you love, even Isaac, and go unto the high country, and offer him on one of the mountains which I will point out to you. And he rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey. Excuse me, and took his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood of the ascending smoke offering. And he went to the place on the third day, and he saw the place afar off. And he came to a well of water, and he said to his young men, Abide ye here with the donkey, and I and the lad shall go yonder. And when we have worship, we shall come again to you. And he took the wood of the ascending smoke offering, and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife, and they went both of them together to that place. This is agreeing with Genesis. And Isaac said to his father, Father, and he said, Here I am, my son. And he said unto him, Behold the fire and the knife and the wood, but where is the sheep for the ascending smoke offering, Father? And he said, Elohim will provide himself a sheep for an ascending smoke offering, my son. And he drew near to the place of Mount Elohim. This is the Mount of God. And he built an altar, and he placed the wood on the altar, and bound Isaac his son, and placed him on the wood which was upon the altar, and stretched forth his hand to take the knife to slay Isaac his son. And I stood before him, and before the prince Mastema, and Yahuwah said, Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown. I have shown that he fears Yahuwah. And I called to him from heaven and said unto him, Abraham, Abraham. And he was terrified and said, Behold, here I am. And I said unto him, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything to him. For now I know that you fear Yahuwah, and have not withheld your son, your firstborn, from me. And the prince Mastema was put to shame. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a ram caught by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it for an ascending smoke offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the place Yahuwah Yireh, so that it is said, Yahuwah has seen, that is Mount Zion. And Yahuwah called Abraham by his name a second time from heaven, as he caused us to appear to speak to him in the name Yahuwah. Listen up. In the name of the Lord. And he said, By himself have I sworn, said Yahuwah, because you have done this thing, and have not withheld your son, your Yachiyd, from me, that in blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand of the seashore. And your seed shall inherit the cities of his enemies, and it shall your seed shall in all nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice, and I have shown to all that you are faithful unto me, and all that you have said unto you. Go in peace. And Abraham went to his young men, and they rose and they went to Barashiyth. And Abraham dwelt by the well of Oath, which is in Barashiyth. And he celebrated this feast every year 7 days with joy, and he called it the feast of Yahuwah, according to the 7 days during which he went and returned in peace. And accordingly has it been ordained and written on the heavenly tablets regarding Israel and his seed, that they should observe this feast 7 days with the joy of feast. Do y'all know what feast this is? That's the Feast of Sukkot. It's the Feast of Sukkot. So the influence from that feast, where he got that feast, started with his trial of his son. That test. And from there, he was the first one to initiate the keeping of such a feast. And if you read Jubilees actually tracks every Jubilee, what took place during the time all the way up until when they leave Egypt. And it tracks that Abraham was the one who started the keeping of the feast, and it ended up passing all the way down to it gets to Levi. And then when it comes to Mount Sinai, God puts it in law. Any questions, comments, concerns, grievances, anything regarding Bible study? I know I went over a lot. I know it was a lot of information. I see you guys here. I appreciate you guys here. Did you guys enjoy the Bible study? I know it was a lot. Go ahead, Nana, Evangelist Deborah.
Yes. No, I was waiting till you finish.
I'm done.
Oh, the Bible study was very, very good. It was very interesting. You went over the word, and everybody enjoyed it. I'm saying we can't pay for the word, but we definitely can show our love to the one God used to give us the word. So, and if you love Him, you love coming to Bible study, and you love hearing the word of God, we appreciate if you give. And we're not giving for the word, we're giving to let Him know thank you for letting God use you. God said it's better to give than to receive. And the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And we can't ask for much, but God will sure bless you. He will sure give it back to you. So whatever was put on your heart, He has the cash app there. You can cash app and thank God, because God will put it on your heart what to give, and He will appreciate it.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Dr. Lewis is on FaceTime because for some reason he couldn't connect to Zoom for some reason. This happened to him twice, so we got to figure out what's going on so that way he can start connecting to Zoom. But Dr. Lewis, you still there?
Sure, man. While I was doing the tutoring and listening at the same time, I caught some really, really good nuggets. Um, Definitely a good lesson. Definitely one I gotta go back and listen to because I think the message was heavier and it had to be, some of